If you want to start making money in real estate investing, you've probably heard that wholesaling is one of the cheapest and easiest ways to get started. And although that may be true, local governments around the country are cracking down on wholesaling, and it may soon become illegal. Illinois, Oklahoma, Philadelphia, these are just a few of the places where there are new laws going on the books that might make wholesaling illegal. So why are wholesalers getting so much hate? Well, in today's video, I'm gonna break down all the different directions that hate is coming from, tell you a little bit about each of those laws that are going on the books in different places around the country, as well as share my opinion on whether I think wholesaling is actually unethical and should become illegal. But before we get into it, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, my name is Lili, and this is where I'm documenting my real estate investing journey and bring you guys along with me. Now, I'm not a lawyer or a real estate agent, and this video is not meant to give you any type of legal advice, but I did start investing in real estate about a year ago when I purchased this duplex with $0 towards my down payment, and in about the last 3 months or so, I've done over $20,000 in wholesale real estate deals. So this is something that I'm doing every single day, and I want to warn you guys because I've been hearing a lot about these different laws that are going on the books in different areas against wholesaling, and I'm also here to give you a heads up in case you're thinking about starting out in this business, because there's gonna be some heat coming your way because there's a lot of people out there that hate wholesalers. And if at the end of this video you decide you still want to wholesale real estate and you want to learn how I've done it in a not very friendly wholesaler state without having any problems assigning my contracts, definitely consider reserving a spot at the next 5-day beginners bootcamp. I host this bootcamp on Zoom for new investors who want to learn how to analyze deals, who want to estimate rehab, learn how to provide proof of funds to agents, find cash buyers, and basically consistently do deals every month. I'll leave a link in the description for you to reserve a spot, as spots are limited for each bootcamp. But for now, turn that like button blue and let's get started. So you may or may not know what wholesaling is, and to give you a very brief overview, we can consider a deal that was actually stolen from me by a rival wholesaler. So I got the property under contract for $73,000, meaning between myself and the seller, we signed a contract where he agreed to sell me the house for $73,000. I then sent this deal to a cash buyer in my area, and they agreed to buy it from me for $81,500. Boom. For finding the deal, negotiating it with the seller, and basically dumping it into my cash buyer's lap, that cash buyer was willing to pay me an assignment fee or a wholesale fee of $8,500. Now, that would have been a great deal for me, but unfortunately, another wholesaler who actually pretended to be a cash buyer in order to get on my buyer's list saw this deal when I sent it out, skip traced the homeowner, went to them, and basically offered them a little bit more than I was offering them in order to convince the seller to break the contract with me and sell to this other wholesaler. So I didn't get that $8,500, and now you understand why people hate wholesalers. Video over. But no, for real, I'll be posting a complete breakdown of exactly how that deal got stolen from me, as well as some things that you might be able to do to prevent things like that happening. But at the end of the day, if somebody breaks a contract, yes, you can take them to court, but I didn't have time for all of that, so I'm making a video about it instead. That video will be out soon, so definitely turn on your notifications. This is just one example of why people hate wholesalers and why we've kind of gotten a bad reputation in the real estate investing industry, because there are a lot of people out there doing shady, unethical things. And so if you want to make sure you're not one of those people, definitely stay tuned, because tomorrow's video is going to be part 2 of this one, and we're going to talk all about the things you need to do so that you don't become one of those unethical people who steals other people's deals. So obviously, wholesaling can be a brutal game. You could very quickly make 4 or 5 figure checks, but you could just as quickly have a deal fall through. But at the core, you're being a middleman between a homeowner and a real estate investor, and you're collecting a fee for the work you do to bring those two parties together and negotiate the deal. This means you're going to be working with homeowners, investors, as well as real estate agents. And so the question to answer is, why do they all hate us sometimes? Well, when you go to Home Depot or to Lowe's because you need a new refrigerator, you walk in and you see a bunch of different options, and you know that like in the back of the store, they're not building those refrigerators. They bought them from a factory somewhere that sells refrigerators, and now they're here selling them to you. And if Lowe's bought that refrigerator for $100, you don't expect that they're gonna put it on their shelf for you to buy for $100. Absolutely not. They're gonna make a profit on that refrigerator for the work and the time that they put into making it available for you. In this example, Lowe's is doing something very similar to what a wholesaler might do. But there are a lot of wholesalers out there using shady tactics, and that's what gives the industry a bad reputation. Wholesalers are usually contacting homeowners who, for some reason, might be motivated to sell their house at less than market value. Maybe the property needs a lot of repairs, maybe it's in outdated condition, maybe the owner lives out of state and just doesn't want to deal with it, maybe they're heading towards a divorce or a foreclosure and they need quick cash. Whatever the reason, someone in a situation like this is deemed a motivated seller, and they usually are getting hundreds of calls a month from every single wholesaler in their area. These wholesalers are basically asking them, do they want to sell their house for cheap? And it can get annoying. I don't know about you guys, but I hate getting random phone calls. And most of the time I don't even answer them, but when I do, I'm definitely picking up with the attitude. So for people who own distressed or vacant properties, they're getting dozens of calls a week from every wholesaler in their area. They're definitely not going to be happy about that. I recently saw a post in a wholesaling Facebook group that was saying if you were to make 200 cold calls to these homeowners, you'd probably only find like one actual homeowner who was motivated, and that would turn into a deal. That is a lot of cold calls. And if every wholesaler in your area is cold calling a very similar list of properties, those homeowners are just gonna get more and more annoyed, and there's gonna be more and more complaints. You've probably also seen the yellow postcards that get sent out, or those "We Buy Houses" signs all over the place. Those are also wholesalers who are looking for deals, and just FYI, in most places, those bandit signs are actually illegal, and if the city finds out who you are, they will fine you for that. Besides just the amount of calls and mail that people get from wholesalers, another reason that homeowners don't like wholesalers is because they lie and string them along. If you don't have the cash on hand or the access to something like hard money, most times you're not actually the person who's going to end up buying the property from the seller. But not every wholesaler discloses this and tells the owner that they're actually the middleman. And if the wholesaler's struggling to find an actual cash buyer for that deal, they might spend the entire 30 days while under contract looking for a cash buyer, and if they can't find one, they just back out at the last moment, and then the seller is left, one, in a worse position because they could have sold their house to someone else who was actually gonna buy it, and two, they're confused because they didn't even realize that this person they were under contract with didn't actually have the money to buy the property. So it makes sense why a homeowner would be upset about this. The question of whether or not you should disclose that you're a wholesaler is one that I see all over the place and that I get sent a lot. And as a woman who has the audacity to share my opinion on the internet, especially one who played professional basketball and is now raking in big checks every few weeks, I get my fair share of patronizing comments. Everyone from the "go make me a sandwich" crowd to the angry people who unsub because I didn't answer their 18 comments over Instagram DMs. I usually pay them no mind, but while I was making this video, I decided to screenshot a few and share them with you guys. So here's someone claiming that wholesaling is unethical for one of the reasons that I mentioned, presenting yourself as someone who you're not. I would agree with this, although it's funny that they're assuming that the only way to get someone to do a deal with you is to lie to them about who you are. This isn't true. Like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to lie. I always disclose exactly what I plan to do to the seller, to the real estate agent, and I haven't had any problems so far. I'm gonna talk more about the language that I use to disclose that I'm a wholesaler in tomorrow's video. So I was kind of on board with this person until I kept reading and saw that they claim that it's more ethical to control the property and actually buy it rather than to simply assign it. To me, this is just an example of not understanding the game. There's no ethical difference between double closing on a property where you buy it and then resell it to your cash buyer 5 minutes later, or as they say, whenever you decide you don't want to renovate it yourself. There's no difference between buying it and reselling it in that type of situation than there is to simply assigning the property at closing. In fact, it's more expensive to actually buy the property and then resell it because you're gonna have to pay closing costs twice, and usually if a wholesaler has to do that, they're going to just offer the seller less to account for that extra amount that they'll have to pay. So ethically, there's no difference there, and in terms of the money that's going to the seller, it could actually be less if you decide to take this route. Let's keep going. Wholesaling real estate is dumb. This next anonymous internet commenter is saying that your entire business model as a wholesaler is centered around squeezing homeowners out of their equity to fill the pockets of an investor or corporation. That doesn't sound like a good thing to do. Maybe this person is actually being noble, right? But then they go on to say that if they're gonna squeeze somebody out of their hard-earned equity, they're not gonna do it for an investor, they're gonna do it for themselves. Whew. Okay. First, If you're gonna say that squeezing someone out of their hard-earned equity is wrong if you're doing it to make someone else richer, but it's okay if you do it to make yourself richer, yeah. Now, to address the actual substance of this comment, are wholesalers actually squeezing people out of their hard-earned equity and stealing their life savings? In my opinion, although there are no absolutes, no. Let's look at a deal to evaluate how I'm choosing to run my business. This is a property that was for sale on Zillow, and the homeowner said that they only wanted cash buyers because the property was in such bad condition. As you can see, there were multiple places in the home where the ceiling was falling in, there were structural issues, and general cosmetics that needed updating, like the kitchen and replacing some old carpet. Now, I got this property under contract with the seller and their real estate agent for $76,000, and when I went to pass it off to one of my cash buyers, they agreed to pay me $82,000 for it. I disclosed to the seller and the real estate agent that I was the deal finder, and they got their $76,000 in cash and they were happy. The real estate investor didn't have to go out and search for this deal and negotiate it themselves. I sent it to them with all the information they needed. They were willing to pay $82,000 for their next investment property and they were happy. And for my work, I got to make $6,000 and I was happy. I can't speak for anyone else's business, but my goal is to find homeowners who want to sell their property, usually for cash, and I'm able to offer them the amount of cash that they agree on and then pass that deal off to an investor for an amount of cash that they agree on, and I make the money in the middle for my time and work. If you believe that you're squeezing someone out of their hard-earned money and you believe that's wrong, but then you turn around and say you're okay if you are the one that benefits from it, that probably has more to do with you as an individual and less to do with wholesaling in general. But it's not just the homeowners who have beef with wholesalers, it's also the cash buyers and investors. I was recently reading through a Bigger Pockets article which was talking about the #1 reason wholesalers have a bad reputation, and they said it's because of getting bad deals. What makes a deal bad? It all depends on the numbers. If you aren't accurately running comps to find your ARV or your after repair value, as well as doing a reasonable estimate for your rehab, then you're probably putting bad numbers into this wholesaling equation and therefore getting deals at a price that actually doesn't work for an investor. When you send out a bad deal, it just hurts your credibility and frustrates investors, and they're less likely to want to work with you. There also isn't any type of regulatory board that sets the rules for wholesalers, and so people are kind of free to do a lot of shady things, like steal other people's deals, as well as try to do something called daisy chaining. This is where a wholesaler pretends to be a cash buyer, gets the deal under contract with the original wholesaler, and then they turn around and try to pass it off to an actual cash buyer. Well, sometimes these daisy chains get so long that you'll find out there are 3, 4, maybe even 5 people who have passed the deal off as their own, and the cash buyer doesn't even know who actually has the original contract with the homeowner. And then finally, on top of the homeowners and the other investors who got beef with the wholesalers, you've also got the real estate agents, and they might hate us more than anyone else. In fact, most of the laws that are going on the books in different states against wholesaling are actually pushed by real estate agents. We'll talk more about those laws in a moment, but first, it's important to understand that wholesalers and real estate agents can be direct competition with each other. Oftentimes, if a homeowner decides to work with a wholesaler, that means that they're not working with the real estate agent, and so it can almost seem like a wholesaler is taking deals from the real estate agent, even though you can work together, and a lot of times real estate agents go after properties that are in good condition and wholesalers go after distressed properties. So it seems to me like there's more kind of perceived competition than actual competition, but either way, it has created some bad blood. And in my opinion, it all comes down to who thinks they're more valuable and deserves to get paid more. When an agent represents someone, they usually get about 3% of the purchase price, and that amount is paid out of the seller's pocket. So if we just imagine that a person was selling their house for $100,000, well, the real estate agent who represented them would get $3,000 and the homeowner would actually get $97,000. putting aside extra fees and all that other stuff. But when a wholesaler does a deal, their assignment fee isn't a percentage of the deal, and it's not paid by the seller. If a wholesaler got that same deal under contracts for $100,000, they could pass it off to a cash buyer for whatever that cash buyer agrees to. If they're cool with buying it for $115,000, then the wholesaler makes $15K. If they were cool with paying $150,000 for it, then the wholesaler can make $50K. There's no limit for the wholesaler other than what themselves and the cash buyer agree on, whereas for the real estate agent, they're oftentimes kind of restricted by the percentage amount of the deal that they're getting. And if you've seen my other videos, you know that I usually wholesale on market properties, which means that the homeowner is usually represented by a real estate agent. And on every single deal that I've done, my assignment fee has actually been more than the real estate agent's commission. So I try to be upfront and honest about the fact that I'm going to be assigning this deal. And so it kind of prevents the real estate agent from having that bad blood. But you can imagine that a real estate agent might be a little salty if they see that the wholesaler made more money than they did, especially because the real estate agent had to pay to get their license, and they're governed by the state body and they have to abide by certain regulations and certain laws, whereas the wholesaler doesn't have to go through any of that and can possibly make more money. So it makes sense why different people kind of don't like wholesalers, but soon enough, it won't just be homeowners hanging up on you or real estate agents refusing to work with you. There are actual laws coming to ban wholesaling, and I've heard of some hefty fines of like $20, $30, $40, even $50,000 for breaking those laws. So one such law is in Illinois, which says that you cannot wholesale more than one deal per year without having your real estate license. So for most people, if you're trying to make wholesaling a significant part of the income that you're bringing in, you're gonna wanna do more than one deal per year. So in that case, you would have to get your real estate license and abide by all the different things that realtors are required to do in order to legally wholesale in Illinois. There was also a bill introduced in Oklahoma, which was titled the Predatory Real Estate Wholesaler Prohibition Act, which isn't a biased name at all. This bill tried to make wholesaling and assigning contracts illegal even if you did have a real estate license. It seems like the bill failed in the latest committee earlier this year, but it could always be reworked or reintroduced in the future. And in the city of Philadelphia just last week, there was a new ordinance introduced that would also make wholesaling illegal unless you had a real estate license, similar to what's going on in Illinois. So if you want to wholesale real estate, it's probably a good idea to look up your local laws and make sure you're up to date because they're changing all the time. But it does seem pretty concerning that there are a lot of different places that are trying to get rid of wholesaling. So is it unethical and dumb like our commenters told us it is? Let me know what you think in the comments. I really want to have this discussion with you guys, but my opinion is that it doesn't have to be. Part 2 of this video is dropping tomorrow to go more in depth, but I want to give you guys 3 things right now that I think you could do to make sure that you're not being one of those unethical wholesalers and kind of contributing to the negative reputation that the industry has. The first thing is learn to run your numbers correctly. Getting bad deals under contract is really the #1 way to harm a seller by backing out on them. Then you make the real estate agent upset, they never want to work with you again, and you also sent a bad deal to your buyers, and now you've kind of alienated them and they don't open your emails anymore. So numbers are super important. If you want to learn my system for getting ARV and estimating rehab, providing proof of funds, all that good stuff, definitely reserve a spot in the boot camp because it's something we spend a lot of time going over and doing practice problems to make sure that our offer prices are actually locking in good deals. Second recommendation for you is to learn your local laws. Depending where you're wholesaling and what month you're watching this video in, there may be new laws that have come up or things that have changed, and you don't want to start wholesaling, make a little bit of money, and then lose it all to a high fee just because you didn't know the regulations in your area. And then third, be your own North Star. Be guided by your own personal morals and ethics, and if you feel like something is unethical, don't do it. Don't rely on the shady tricks and tactics that you might see in a Facebook group. If you want to try to make an actual business out of this, try to do it the right way. Build those relationships with people, help people solve problems, and I think you're probably taking the first right step. So definitely check out part 2 of this video if it's already out, and if it's not, definitely check out this video right here. I post 3 times a week, and I'll catch you on the next one.